I never imagined that the day I walked out of my childhood home would be the day I truly discovered who I was meant to be. I grew up in a house where every decision, every expense, every possibility was meticulously divided among my siblings, with me always on the outside looking in. My sister, Lauren, was the golden child. Every milestone of her academic life was celebrated and funded by my parents. Meanwhile, I was expected to find my own way and be independent, as if independence were some kind of punishment. That was the moment I realized that my parents' version of love was conditional, and the idea of family support had been nothing but a well-disguised tool to control us. I still remember the evening when it all crystallized into painful clarity. It was dinner time, and the table was set as always, a picture of domestic normalcy. Lauren was animatedly discussing her acceptance into an elite study abroad program, her eyes sparkling with dreams I once held dear. My parents exchanged looks of pride as if each compliment they lavished on her were currency in a favor bank. I sat there in silence, feeling like an extra on a stage that wasn't meant for me. When the topic of college funding came up, my father casually remarked, "You need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet after all. Lauren will have everything covered." Those words, meant to be practical advice, cut deeper than any betrayal I'd ever experienced. Fueled by anger and determination, I made the decision to leave. I knew that clinging to their delusions would only stunt my growth. I enrolled in a modest college far from home, funding my education through scholarships, part-time jobs, and relentless perseverance. Every extra hour I worked was a silent protest against the injustice I had suffered. I became determined not only to succeed academically, but to forge a life that was truly mine. While Lauren's path was paved with privilege, mine was built on sweat, tears, and the constant hum of self-reliance. College life was no bed of roses. I juggled classes, work shifts, and mounting debts, all while battling the weight of isolation and the persistent echo of parental neglect. Yet, in those struggles, I found an unexpected strength. I built friendships with people who had faced their own battles, mentors who recognized talent beyond circumstance, and even discovered a passion for creative writing. A way to channel my frustrations and make sense of a world that had once seemed so unjust. Every small victory, every grade that defied expectations, felt like a rebuke to the idea that I was somehow less deserving because I didn't come with a golden safety net. Years passed, and I carved out a life that was independent, authentic, and, most importantly, mine. I graduated with honors, landed a decent job in a field that challenged me, and eventually moved into an apartment that I could call home. Despite all the hardships, I had learned to trust my own strength. Yet, the ghost of my past never fully receded. There were moments when I would catch myself wondering if I had been too proud, too stubborn to accept help, even if that help came with strings attached. But the memory of every dismissive comment, every passive-aggressive remark about my independence, kept me resolute in my choice to never return. Then, out of the blue, came the phone call that shattered the fragile peace I had built around myself. It was my father. His voice, uncharacteristically subdued, asked if we could meet. I hesitated, torn between a desire for closure and a fierce need to maintain the distance I had fought so hard to establish. In the end, curiosity overpowered caution, and I agreed to meet him at a neutral cafe in the heart of the city, a place where secrets are spilled and facades stripped away in the fluorescent glare of truth. Walking into that cafe, I felt a cocktail of emotions. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the man who had set my life on a path of hardship, but I was also curious about the man he had become after all these years. As I waited, memories of every cold dismissal and every cutting remark surged back. When my father finally arrived, his posture was defeated, his eyes rimmed with what I assumed was regret. He began with a stuttered apology, confessing that he had made a mistake by not supporting me. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that his apology was less about genuine remorse and more about self-preservation in the wake of a major family dispute. I learned that during a recent explosive conflict between my parents and Lauren, one that had erupted over the control of the family's finances and power, things had gotten dangerously close to tearing the family apart. My father, it seemed, had tried to maneuver himself into a position of control by playing favorites once again, only to have his schemes exposed by Lauren's unyielding determination to assert her own independence. The fallout had been swift and brutal, and now, in the midst of the chaos, he was reaching out to me as if my presence could somehow mend the shattered pieces of a broken family. But I wasn't interested in mending anything. I had long since learned that forgiveness was a luxury for those who hadn't been burned by betrayal. Sitting across from him, I felt a simmering anger rise. His apology was feeble, a desperate grasp at redemption that was too little, too late. I recalled every moment of my life that had been overshadowed by his hypocrisy. The nights I cried over impossible loan payments, the humiliation of watching Lauren receive accolades that were rightfully earned by someone else's favoritism, and the constant, unspoken message that my struggles were my own fault. I listened as he rambled on about regrets and missed opportunities, but his words sounded hollow. The man before me was nothing more than a shadow of what I had once hoped he could be. A father who would have fought for me rather than leaving me to fend for myself. I didn't forgive him. Not then, not now, and certainly not in the future. As he begged for a second chance, I saw only an old man trying to rewrite a narrative that had long been set in stone. I recalled the countless times I had proven my worth without his support, and the bitter taste of betrayal that still lingered on my tongue. In that moment, I decided that my life was my own, and his attempts at reconciliation were simply another way to control and manipulate me. I left the cafe with a finality that shocked even me, a definitive break from a past that had done nothing but cause me pain. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of introspection and decisive action. I began to piece together the remnants of my family's shattered dynamics, determined to confront the underlying betrayal that had always haunted me. I reached out to old friends and distant relatives, gathering the threads of the story I had been forced to live. I soon discovered that my father's manipulative tactics extended far beyond our immediate circle. His relentless favoritism towards Lauren wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern of emotional manipulation that had poisoned every aspect of our family life. The more I learned, the more I felt the need to exact a revenge that was not born of a desire to reunite, but to punish him for every calculated slight, every moment of neglect. I began my own investigation into the tangled web of deceit that had defined my upbringing. I compiled emails, text messages, and even voice recordings that documented every instance of favoritism and neglect. With every piece of evidence, my resolve grew stronger. I wasn't just seeking personal vindication. I was preparing to expose the hypocrisy that had long fueled the fractures in our family. I wanted the world to see the truth, that my father had always valued convenience over genuine care, that his brand of independence was nothing but a mask for a deep-seated insecurity and need for control. The moment of reckoning came during a family gathering that was meant to be a reconciliation of sorts. My parents had orchestrated the event in the hope that I would finally come back and mend the broken bonds. It was held in the sprawling backyard of the family home, a place that had once been filled with childhood laughter, but now reeked of pretense and sorrow. As soon as I stepped through the door, the tension was palpable. My father's eyes darted nervously, and my mother's smile was strained, as if she were reciting lines from a well-practiced script. I wasted no time in turning the gathering into a platform for truth. In front of everyone, relatives, family friends, even the neighbors who had long witnessed our dysfunction, I laid bare the evidence of my father's manipulation. I recounted every slight, every moment of neglect, and every instance where I had been cast aside while Lauren was celebrated. I watched as faces turned from disbelief to outrage, as the carefully constructed facade of our family life crumbled before their eyes. My father tried to interject, his voice cracking as he attempted to defend his actions, but his words fell on deaf ears. The evidence was irrefutable, and the room was charged with the energy of long-suppressed anger and betrayal. I didn't wait for forgiveness, nor did I offer it. I simply stated that the time for excuses was over, that I had spent years building a life of integrity and hard work, and that I would not allow my future to be dictated by the whims of a man who had never once believed in me. The look of shock on his face was more satisfying than any victory I could have imagined. I had not only reclaimed my own narrative, but had also shown everyone that true strength comes from standing alone and fighting for one's truth. In the weeks that followed, the fallout from that confrontation rippled through our family. Lauren, who had long been complicit in our father's schemes by remaining silent and accepting the privileges that came her way, was forced to confront the reality of her own betrayal. My mother, torn between loyalty and the dawning realization of the damage she had enabled, became a quiet observer of the consequences of her actions. And my father, once the puppet master pulling the strings of our lives, was left to face the consequences of a lifetime spent prioritizing his own image over genuine love and care. I found a strange sense of liberation in that moment of public reckoning. I had finally taken control of the narrative that had haunted me for so long. I knew that the path ahead would not be easy. The scars of betrayal would take time to heal, and the remnants of our fractured family would continue to echo in the quiet moments of my life. But I also knew that I had made a choice to never allow the past to define me, to reject the false promises of unconditional love, and to seek justice for every sacrifice I had been forced to make. Revenge, in my eyes, wasn't about seeking to destroy someone completely. It was about reclaiming your dignity and showing that you are not defined by the cruelty of others. I made it my mission to rebuild not only my life but also the trust I had once lost in the concept of family. I began speaking at support groups, sharing my story with those who had been similarly betrayed by the institutions meant to protect them. I wrote articles about the importance of self-reliance, of questioning the status quo, and of standing up against manipulation. Each story I told was a step away from the painful memories and a step toward a future where I was the master of my own destiny. I never looked back. I continued to succeed in my career, building a reputation as someone who thrived in the face of adversity. I surrounded myself with people who valued honesty, hard work, and independence, the very qualities I had fought so hard to embody. I even started mentoring others who were grappling with their own familial betrayals, urging them to harness their pain and turn it into strength. Every time I saw someone take control of their life after being wronged, I felt a small victory against the tyranny of my past. Years later, I learned that my father had been forced to sell a significant portion of our family's assets, a consequence of the public exposure and the financial fallout from his reckless decisions. The irony was not lost on me. The man who had once prided himself on his ability to control every aspect of our lives was now facing the reality of his own failures. I received a brief, almost apologetic message from him, suggesting that perhaps one day we could try to rebuild what was lost. But I knew that forgiveness was not an option. The damage had been done too deeply, and I had spent too many years proving that my worth was not measured by his support. As I reflect on my journey, I see it as a testament to the human spirit, the ability to rise above betrayal and forge a path of genuine independence. I learned that sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to the greatest awakenings. I learned that revenge, when it is not born out of hatred but out of the desire to reclaim your truth, can be a catalyst for profound personal transformation. I learned that no amount of parental approval can substitute for self-respect, and that the validation you truly need is the one you give yourself. To anyone who finds themselves betrayed by those who should care for them most, know this: your worth is not defined by the selective love of others. Your strength comes from the battles you fight and the scars you bear. I walked away from my family not out of spite alone, but out of a necessity to honor my own potential. And now, standing in the aftermath of a long, painful struggle, I can say with certainty that I am free. Free from the chains of favoritism, free from the burden of guilt, and free to live a life that is authentically my own. In the end, my story is not one of forgiveness, it's one of liberation. I have built a life on the foundation of my own hard work, and every success is a silent rebuke to the man who once denied me the chance to thrive. My father may have wanted me back after a major family dispute, hoping to patch over old wounds and reclaim a semblance of control. But I have no room in my life for those who only offer empty apologies and half-hearted attempts at redemption. The betrayal was clear, the evidence undeniable, and the cost of trust too high. I choose to move forward with my head held high, knowing that every setback I endured was a stepping stone toward a life defined not by the failures of others, but by my own resilience. My story is my own, written in the ink of hard-fought battles and sealed with the knowledge that true independence is the sweetest form of revenge. And as I continue on this journey, I carry with me the lessons of my past, forever wary of those who would use love as a tool of control, and forever grateful for the strength I discovered when I finally decided to walk away. This isn't a story of a broken family finding its way back together. It's a story of a person who refused to be a victim, a story of taking back power from those who once dictated every facet of my life. I did not forgive the betrayal, and I do not plan to. I have reclaimed my narrative, turning the sting of neglect into a beacon of self-empowerment that lights my way forward. Every day, as I build on the life I have created, I remember that independence is not given. It is earned through struggle, through pain, and ultimately through the unyielding belief that I deserve better than the limited love that was offered to me. I share my story not to revel in past suffering, but to remind everyone that there is hope in reclaiming your power no matter how deeply you've been wronged. The scars may never fully fade, but they serve as a reminder of the battles fought and the victories won. I chose to leave, and in doing so, I found a truth that has carried me far beyond the boundaries of a troubled past. My father's attempts to bring me back were nothing more than a final, desperate grasp at power, a reminder that some wounds are too deep to heal with empty words. Now, as I look toward a future built on my own terms, I understand that the real revenge was never about ruining someone else's life. It was about forging my own, independent of the expectations and limitations set by others. And that, in the end, is a freedom I will never trade.